Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and I'm so excited about the guest we have today. It is no exaggeration to say that our guest is one of the finest men in Ponchatoula. I say that emphatically and without reservation because I've known this man my whole life. We went to St. Joseph's School together, Ponchatoula High School together, and I have really admired the way he is raising his 4 boys. He's a great husband, a great father, a great community servant. He's practically great at everything. So with no further ado, I bring out my old buddy and pal, Kevin Raiford. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Parker. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Well, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Parker, as you'd said, you and I have known each other for a long time, Ponchatoula residents. Born and raised here in Ponchatoula. Got 4 wonderful kids, 17, 15, 13, and 8. All boys. Wow. All boys. Married to a wonderful young lady named Karen. She was a Byers. Born and raised here in Ponchatoula as well. We both come from a pretty large family. My dad was one of 8. My mother was one of 7, and I might have that backwards.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, when I look at you from the 2-kid perspective and think you have a big family, your mom and dad, like, you ain't seen nothing yet.
that's right. And that's kind of where I go with that. A lot of people today think we have a large family, as you just said, but my mom and dad obviously were from a large family. My father.
Obviously, your daddy's a Raiford. What was your mother's maiden name? What's her family?
Shilling.
Oh yeah, great.
Okay. Shilling from out in Waysboro.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, of course, growing up, close buddies with Chad Richard, he's right there in Shilling territory, right? So I knew all those guys. BJ was about our age, and Mikey, and it's a great family. Absolutely. And one of the things I want to get to in your interview today, we're going to talk a lot about family, but one thing I love is you and Karen represent the joining of 2 great Ponchatoula families. The Byers family, Larry and Linda, her parents, and then yours. 4 of the finest people in Ponchatoula, 4 people I always admired growing up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your parents personally and what it was like to grow up in their house, what they meant to you, whole 9 yards.
There was always a funny little story I've told several people over the years, and I mean it when I say it. Growing up at St. Joseph, with Jeff Lesher, Jeffrey Erickson,
right,
Lance Pinion, several other different people. Wonderful, great, small little community. It wasn't until I get to high school, and when I say this, some people think I don't mean it, but I do. I thought everybody lived the life that we lived. I thought everybody had a mom and a dad at home who never got in arguments, who just led wonderful lives. I thought that was what everybody had. And it wasn't until I got to Ponchatoula High School as a freshman that I realized that there was people that didn't live the life that we had. Not to say that someone that's in a split house didn't live a great life. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Right.
It was just that I thought everybody had the mom and dad that I had because all my friends had that.
Sure. Well, I mean, the peer group you mentioned, everybody's kind of living that American dream with that nuclear family intact. Food's on the table, butts are in the pew at church on Sunday. And, y'all, we have, and I'm in that group too. We have been blessed with
Absolutely.
Great family home lives. And in Ponchatoula and St. Joseph in your class, which you know well because my brother Bree graduated with you. Right. Your little class was a lot of success stories in one place, and that makes sense.
It's amazing. You're right. I mean, you had Bree, you had Brandon Smith. I mean, you had Ryan Roberts, Artie Thompson. I mean, you could just go on and on and on with the class that we had. And
it's
you
like
talk about church
7 Yankees, man, of Ponchatoula guys. That's a lot of heavy hitters in one sentence, man.
Right, definitely. Some great guys still a lot of close friends of mine. I talk to all of them. We still stay in touch. But you talk about church pew, and I can't be crazy if I left this story out. The church pew that we sat in as kids and that I grew up in, when St. Joseph Church decided to sell those pews, I was fortunate enough to buy that very pew, split it in half, gave my mother and father one half of it, and I have the other half in a game room that I just finished building.
Oh man, that is so cool.
It's an amazing story to have. Yeah,
that's really amazing. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, to go back to that, I mean, I my mother and father were just incredible. Mr. Larry, Miss Linda, as you said, 2 wonderful servants. I grew up Key Club doing concession stands.
Yeah.
at the different bitty basketball.
And what you're referring to there is they ran the Ponchatoula Youth Basketball League for many years. Miss Linda ran all the concession operations. Larry was the commissioner. And, of course, you and I served on that board, coached in that league, worked in that concession stand.
Absolutely.
And you got to see that up close and personal before you married their beautiful daughter.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. And then, Karen, we still talk about this. Karen used to always do the books, all weekend. You knew where Karen was. Karen was doing the books. Her and Christy and other, they would do the books. And still to today, you can ask Ben Perrin. Ben Perrin will tell you that there's not a better scorekeeper than Karen Raiford. She's
doubt.
on it. She can take care of it. And she does a great job. And
I remember her sitting at that table at the community center. You're right. She was the best in the business. Speaking of great men like Ben Perrin that we went to school with, and Lord knows he's one of the best, Mark Verbois here is chiming in. And so I wanted to do for our viewers is point out that we have the ability, folks, to bring your comments, put them up here on screen. So if you've got a question for Kevin about family, about baseball, about Ponchatoula, St. Joseph Church, you name it, any of the places he's been or people he's seen, throw it in the comments down below. We'll do our best to bring it up. But as you can see here, Mark, thanks for tuning in again, one of our former guests, says, Kevin, you're one of the best guys in town. And he just wants to know, how did you keep a truck the color of mud looking so shiny and pretty? How do you pull that off?
Look, again, go back to my parents. I mean, Brandon Smith will still tell that story. If you ever want to know how to clean a car, go see Mr. David Raiford. He can show you how to do things you never known. Brandon come over one day, and we had a minivan back when I was at St. Joseph, and my dad would take everything out of the vehicle when he cleaned. I'm talking about the seats, the console, everything. And vacuum everything down, shampoo the seats, and put it all back in. So, Mark, I'd have to give that all to my dad. He showed me how to keep a clean car. But I'll go into one other story for you, Mark, when it goes to the white truck that I drove there that you're probably talking about, the four-wheel drive. So I had that truck for many years. Me and Josh Waddell and Buster and plenty of others would always go mud riding during college days. And one night I did a little too much driving, and I blew the transmission in that truck. And thankfully, my brother worked for the Ford dealership in Baton Rouge and was able to get a new transmission in it, and everything was fine. My dad never knew that ever happened. And
that's
then
hilarious.
I gave that.
Well, he does now, or he will.
No, he does now.
Get out.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have told this story. So I gave that truck. My nephew took that truck when he was in college, and not too long ago, actually, the transmission went out. My dad just happened to be over there, and they were taking the transmission out or what have you, and it had refurbished on it. So my dad calls me and says, "Son, do you have a story to tell me?" So I had to tell my dad that story, and still got in trouble as a grown adult for something I did when I was in college. But
that's too good.
Good times.
Well, that's funny. It reminds me, I've got a similar story. It's not quite that good, but we also loved mud riding when we were in high school. And my dad, gave me this beautiful white Bronco. Folks, if you remember the OJ Bronco, Kevin knows. He rode in it many times.
Yes, yes.
So I've got the white Bronco, which is the coolest wheels you could possibly have in 1997 or whenever this was. And my pal at the time, Jason Vickner, and I decided to go down to Manchac and go mud riding. And we got after it, and it got out of hand. And this truck got so stuck, He calls a guy up, big old dually, a Ford with a 460 in it.
Oh, yeah.
Can't pull us out. Then the next guy comes, a Chevy with a 454, can't pull us out. Thank God I was with my only friend whose dad had a crane. His father was in the excavation business. So they went and hooked up that Bronco to four corners and picked it up and placed it, on the highway. And you could hear the bumpers creaking, and it sounded like the axle was going to break. And it was the most nervous 30 seconds of my life when they were pulling that truck out of the mud. But like you, I knew better than to tell my daddy, and he found out years later.
Absolutely, you're right.
That's one thing about Ponchatoula. It doesn't matter how many grays you get in the beard or how much hair I've lost. Dad's still dad, and when you're in trouble, you're in trouble.
That's it, no doubt. You're right.
That's funny. Well, tell us about Mr. David. I mean, obviously, he's such a well-respected man. I think about him until the pandemic came and we had to slow this down. I so look forward to seeing him at the gym in the morning with your Uncle Warren Babin, and it's such a great generation. But your dad is kind of the quiet storm type of guy. He's a hardworking fella. He's an extremely moral man. He's just a wonderful exemplar of kind of who we should be as men, as fathers, as husbands. What was he like kind of as a dad? Because you're coming up as a middle child. You mentioned your older brother. You got a younger sister. What did he do to guide you and kind of help you become the man you are, and especially the father that you are here today?
I can tell you it was a lot of people don't know that I have two older brothers. I have one brother that's 54, Russ, they're 54. I have another brother, Chris, who's 50. So, my mom and dad knew everything I was going to do before I ever did it because they've been there and they've done it.
Right.
And if you ask my son, Lawson, who would sit in the same seat that I sit in, as the third child, I try to explain that to him all the time. But, as far as my mom and dad, I really couldn't. They're just wonderful people. When I tell people that I never heard my dad holler as a kid, I'd never heard my dad raise his voice ever. He was just one of those men, as you said, just a quiet leader. He would just look at you and you knew, hey, you better go do whatever he wants you to do. And plenty of things. I always thought growing up that I would do what he did. He retired from Dow Chemical. That's where he worked his entire life. And I always thought that that's kind of where I would be. And he sat down with me one day and he said, son, you don't want to do this. He said, you miss too much of your children's lives. And I never, ever thought he missed anything. A game here or there because he was at work.
He was always there for you.
Exactly. They were always there for me. Still are to this day. Same thing. Again, I can't leave Mr. Larry and Miss Linda out. Same thing.
Yeah.
Some wonderful people have been great to Karen and Christy and Corey and do a wonderful job helping us. And we're both so blessed to have such wonderful parents. My grandpa and grandma, I lost their grandpa when I was young. I can remember I was in fourth grade whenever he passed, worked for Bo Brothers. But same thing, Karen's grandpa, John Booth.
Father or your mother's father?
My mother's father, Mr. Papa Schilling.
Okay.
But that was a tragic story in its own. And he was a Purple Heart recipient. But
oh wow.
True same American thing. Absolutely, same thing with Karen's. Both of her grandpas were just wonderful men. John Booth just passed away. I think it's probably been 10 years now, and I may be wrong there by a year or two. But he was one of those wonderful men. As far as the stories that he told and the things that he helped us with. When those people pass, you lose so much of
doubt.
Just things just simple things that you could ask him, and he knew exactly how to do it. And just generations of things that you lose when we lose those people, it's huge.
You're so right. Think about it. I was not blessed with my actual grandparents growing up. My grandfathers, my grandmothers, thank God, were here and were wonderful to us, but my grandfathers were not. But one neat thing about Ponchatoula is there's so many other people that can fill that role. Next door, we had Mr. Wink's Vineyard, the old retired principal of Martha Vineyard, and he was the best pawpaw in the world to us, and he taught us everything we knew. He fixed every, flat bike tire I ever had, and we drove him crazy, misplacing his tools. And Mr. A.J. Bacher could still tell you stories, about how much we did him. He was so patient with us and such a true teacher in life, And when I walk my boys over to mom and dad's house all the time, and every Saturday we go over there, we end up in his yard.
Right.
Whether we want the kids to or not, they migrate that way. And you can't pass his old shop without thinking about, that's the spot he taught me how to fix a tire. That's how he taught me how to fix a chain on a bike. That's where his boat was, where he'd take us fishing and, teach us how to fish.
Absolutely.
And thank you for sharing that, man. That's cool. Well, tell us about your mother, another just, wonderful woman, another strong Ponchatoula character, who didn't need to get loud and crazy to be a strong, wonderful character.
Right. Absolutely.
Her and the impact she's had on you and Karen and your family.
Absolutely. Another wonderful, she just, quiet leader, just did everything, took care of the family. As you said, we had 4 in our family, 4 children. And, my mother never worked. As you say, she was a hairstylist by trade, and she cut all of our hair, and she would do different things in the community with, different people. I can remember ladies coming over and getting their hair done and things like that at the house when we were kids. And I can remember saying, no, I want to go get my hair cut somewhere else. I don't want you to cut my hair anymore. And just different things like that. But I mean, Mom was the one always out bringing us to practice. Me and Regina, for that fact, always getting us where we needed to be. I can remember hours and hours of homework. My mother was the one always there with me, helping me with all of that. I wasn't the best student in the world at St. Joseph as far as the education. It just took me a little bit longer to learn all of it. And if it wouldn't have been for my mother there helping me with those things, it would have been difficult. And I can never thank her for those times.
What a strong woman. And look, we're not the only two that feel that way. We've got comment here. The Raiford family is the best. We're so blessed to be their neighbor and friend. Thank you guys for posting that. You're so right. What about what Ashley Bowe is saying here? She was so lucky to have Mr. David and Miss Diane as her extra parents. Nothing but love.
Absolutely. Ashley was like a little sister of mine. We're real good friends.
Wonderful woman. She's so well loved around here. Your buddy Christopher Murray says, "What's up, Coach?"
Absolutely. What's up, Chris? Yep.
So your friends are chiming in. Another Chris here, Chris Romano from Baton Rouge. Nothing but love and respect for Kevin and the entire Raiford family. They're great people. So, this is not, you don't have to take Kevin's word for it, to what great parents he has. Any of us that saw them in action when we were growing up know that to be fact. And of course, now they're great grandparents, and they'd have to be to keep up with you and your crew. You told me off screen before we got on, you guys have 15 ball games this weekend. Is that right?
15 games between all four of them, between soccer
oh my
and baseball.
God. Including, as soon as you leave here, scat, you're heading to a game. So we won't keep you too long.
I've got 2 games tonight. So as we speak, the St. Joseph baseball team's playing St. Paul.
Yeah.
And as soon as I finish that, my oldest son, Lathan, has a soccer game in Covington, or Mandeville, actually. He's on a national team out of Mandeville, cool. the Mandeville Lakers. And, in fact, we were actually supposed to be on our way back from Las Vegas this past week for a national tournament they were supposed to play over there. COVID kind of got in the way and shut it down. Yeah. A lot of the guys that he plays with are from St. Paul. So the remake date, the rescheduled date for that Las Vegas tournament was the same week they have ACTs at St. Paul. So we weren't able to make that tournament.
Trip,
but so that's what we do. But there's 2 Chris's that you showed. Chris, right out of high school, I didn't want to leave the sport of baseball, so I started coaching.
Tell us about that.
I started coaching baseball. Just to coach, didn't have a kid, on a team. I actually reached out to my Uncle Sidney and Aunt Pat. Stephen was younger at that time.
And these are the Alexanders, folks. Of course, I know who he's talking about, and most of Ponchatoula does. But for new folks, Sidney and Pat Alexander, 2 of the finest people in town.
Absolutely. So, I picked up and I started coaching Stephen, and man, we ended up taking a great little group of kids. I mean, I could name all of them, and I'd end up missing out a few of them, but we went on, and if anybody from Ponchatoula baseball knows anything, that in the younger days in the 90s, Gonzales was the team to beat.
Oh my gosh. Never get past Gonzales.
You could never get past Gonzales.
Yeah.
Well, we did. We were able to beat Gonzales and was able to go to the state tournament, and we competed well over there. We ended up losing it. We didn't win the whole thing. But man, I created some friendships with that team. I mean, you're talking about John Mike Harriman, Johnny Rick, Stephen Alexander.
Yeah, great guys, great little athletes.
Corey Gonzalez, Trevor Bergeron.
Yeah, coached several of those kids myself. Corey was my catcher and coach's pitch.
Trace King, Alan Waddell. There was a ton of them, and we just had a team that was it was a blast to coach, and those guys have all gone on and done great things.
Sure.
And then Chris Romano, the guy that you mentioned there. I've coached his kid, Easton, since he was 9 years old in a competitive travel ball league, and he's playing now for Dunham. As a freshman, made the Dunham baseball team, which isn't an easy feat.
Chris, if you're still listening, congrats on that, man. That's exciting.
And congrats to Chris, and they're expecting a baby here soon, which was big news for him. So congratulations!
Big time congrats on that. Yeah,
absolutely. Him and Emily, so that's big news. But yeah, I guess we're kind of leading into that now, talking about the sports and where we're going. A lot of people will probably think, Kevin, Karen, y'all are crazy. What are y'all doing with all your time, 15 games on a weekend? Why are you doing all of that? What, you don't have a weekend, you don't have a life. What are you doing? And, Karen and I just, and I can't talk enough about Karen. She's amazing. And I'll start crying.
Don't worry. We're going to get there. I'm going to save the tears for the latter part of the show.
Absolutely.
In case you
but
have to cut it short.
A little thing that Karen and I talk about with our kids is, sports is a means of which we want to raise our children in, and what it means when you really understand what sports do for children and how much it means in life, it's not until then that you really understand what we do and why we do it. And when I mean us, I mean all the people that spend all the time. I mean, what better way to learn life lessons than on a baseball field, a soccer field, a basketball field, to understand that you have a job. Somebody's depending on you to be prepared to do your job on the field. And when you get in, when you become an adult in life and you have a job, somebody's depending on you every day to carry out your job. And if you don't, you have consequences, and you have a boss, you have a coach, and you have to learn how to take that constructive criticism. And if you can learn that at a young age, there was a stat, and I can't name it right now. I should have wrote it down, but it was something like 86% of successful business people, had sports in their life somewhere. And I couldn't agree with that anymore. I mean, it's so much to understand everything that goes on. You're going to lose, but you got to get back out on the field the next week and practice harder to be better. You're not going to get everything you want in the job right away. You're not going to step in and be the boss right out the gate. You got to work to get to it.
Right.
So as a player, you have to work to get your spot.
You earn everything you get, right?
Absolutely. And that's why Karen and I put so much into what we do for our children in the sports arena, and why we think it's such just an important part of grooming them to be, the great young men that they're becoming.
Well, and you're so right. And let's face it, it's also what you and Karen love. So people who say y'all don't have a weekend, y'all don't have a life, they don't know you, because you just sit down on the head a while ago. You guys were doing this long before you had your own kids, and certainly it's more meaningful that you have your own kids on the field. That goes without saying. But she was at that scorer's table, volunteering her time. You were coaching. You were, long before your kids came along. How do I know that? Because I was across the web. We coached together. We coached each other. Did it all, right?
Yeah, that's it.
You bring up John Mike Harriman. That kid was a sharpshooting basketball player who broke my heart more than But he and my little brother would go to battle, and these are great old stories. Yeah,
definitely. And Karen back then, Karen would come to all of those games. I mean, when I was coaching that baseball team, Karen was there cheering those kids on, and they loved Karen. I mean, it was it just really it was.
But it's a sports family. Her mom and dad are there every weekend doing it, setting that example. Her little brother's playing. It's a family affair. It was for her. She and her sister and brother and parents, and it was for you.
Absolutely. Mr. Larry and Miss Linda are now in Covington watching Lawson play right now as we speak. So, I mean, they still go. Yeah,
I know. Let's talk about that, because I know it's important to you and Karen and your whole family to try to put those eyes on every game, to try to have a parent, a grandparent, somebody there in the stand for those kids. I mean, is that right? Tell us about how y'all approach that, and maybe logistically, how the heck do you do it? 15 games, divide and conquer. What do you think of that?
Karen and I kind of joke all the time. To be another weekend, we're going to be sports divorce, is what we call it.
That's a great hashtag, sports divorce. That's a great term.
Sports divorce, absolutely. So, Karen and I, long time ago, we made a kind of little commitment that anytime our kids were playing, one of us was going to be there. We wasn't going to allow it for several reasons. One, injuries, you want to be there for them. Two, I hear from so many people, they look up in the stands and they don't see anybody there watching them. And that's just not going to be us. Yeah. And we just never have. This weekend I did have to, I will have to admit, this weekend I have to call in a little backup. My sister-in-law is going to pull in for me and watch one of them for one game. Christy's going to be there. Just because I've got one game in Covington at 9 o'clock. I got one game in Baton Rouge at 9 o'clock. And I got the Strawberry Cup in Hammond at 9 o'clock. Yeah. So there's no way.
15 games, 3 cities, there's some things that are impossible.
Why not?
But, It takes a village. In your case, thankfully, you got a big and willing family.
Absolutely.
And I gotta say, Kevin, you were a great athlete. And in a moment, I'm gonna ask you about your first at bat at PHS for the varsity baseball team. It's pretty legendary. I won't, no spoiler alert, no spoiler here. But
Right.
the hint is, if you know anything about Ted Williams, he and Kevin share something in common. Will Clark does too. But sports is important for star players like you and your friends. Earlier, you mentioned Jeff Leshare. Lord knows, I hope we get to talk about Charlie Landry in a little while,
Absolutely.
who's a dear friend of yours and my, but it's also important to guys like me that are never going to go anywhere. I didn't even make the high school team, much less go on to play college ball, like your kids are about to do and all. But it's important to the structure of your life. Absolutely. Whether you are fortunate enough to grow up in a great household with a, popular, powerful daddy like I did, I had to get on that field and learn that you're not going to earn this job on the field because your daddy's the sheriff. You got to go hit the ball, catch the ball, throw the ball, run the bases, do your thing. And it's also important for that kid, much more so probably, who doesn't have a parent in the stands, who doesn't
Absolutely.
have a dad roll with them on the weekends, but he can still have Coach Kevin, who believes in him and trusts him and loves him and, invests time and energy and attention in him. So tell us about that when you were the player. Let's go back in time and tell us about the coaches that had an impact on you when you were little Kevin Raiford, not Daddy Kevin Raiford.
Absolutely. But I'd have to start by saying this, and it brings your daddy into the picture. Sheriff Layrisson, I can remember my little soccer days when I was little bitty. Sheriff Layrisson would bring the sheriff's van and we'd ride to all over the place and play games. It was the Sheriff's Posse. That was the name of our team. It was sponsored by the Sheriff's Office. And man, I can remember many things that your dad did to help provide for our little soccer teams back in those days, and the many things he did in sports throughout our community.
Well, thanks for mentioning that.
I'll never forget that.
He sure was proud of you. My daddy, and to this day, 79 years old, he loves you. I mean, you were much more than just a player on a team he sponsored. You've been a dear friend to our family for many years. So thank you.
Absolutely. And then worked for him, but we'll get to that later.
Right. We're going to get into that law enforcement.
Absolutely. Sure. But, as far as coming up and coaches that I had that meant a lot to me and kind of directed me, and that I even look back on as I'm coaching and get a lot of things from. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, my Uncle Warren, my Uncle Randy Myers, Warren Babbins, who I'm talking about.
Speaking of your dad earlier, Warren Babbin at the gym every time I get there. Your dad's up there, Uncle Warren's in there. Great man. Well, he was a heck of a coach. He coached me too.
Absolutely. Good coach. Had, St. Joseph days. I had Muddy Burner, one of the best, no doubt.
Yeah.
Milton Hill. I can Brad Watts. I can remember Brad Watts driving up. We thought in a little Mazda with the speakers all in the back. We all wanted to ride with Brad Watts to a game.
No, Brad was the coolest thing in town. We all wanted to be Brad Watts.
That's right. That's right. And then Ronnie Rocan coached me a little bit there toward the end.
Yeah.
Melvin Myers in high school, a coach that's still at Ponchatoula High School, Coach Brian Gardner. That's you talk about interesting is that he coached me. And then now he's coaching my kids at the same program. It's very, very, it's so interesting to see that now and see my kids going through it. But as far as on the soccer side of it, I'd really, really be crazy if I didn't mention this fella, because he was just tremendous to me in soccer. And that's Gary Guidry. Gary and Lynn Guidry were, Coach Gary, I can remember him telling me. And Mr. Steve LeBay was also one of my coaches. Coach Gary and Coach Steve coached together. But I can remember Coach Gary, he would go home. He didn't know soccer. He didn't play soccer. It wasn't that well known back then. He would go home and watch videos and read books. And he learned everything he could to try to teach us what what could help us to compete in a game of soccer. Unfortunately, Jeff played on the Longs team. And I wasn't on the Wolves.
Mr. District MVP, your best friend for life.
Absolutely.
Blood rivalry going there?
Well, it was a little bit, but we never played each other a whole lot. I guess there was an age difference. I'm not sure exactly what it was. Never really looked back at it, but they were definitely the team, and we were kind of thought as the, Coach Gary was and I don't want to say the step coach by no means, because he was
No,
phenomenal.
I know
He
what you're
put
saying. No,
so
Wong
much time
soccer.
in, but he wasn't the Wong.
Wong
You
is,
know?
of course, synonymous with Stice of soccer, right? I mean, that's a really
Absolutely,
big deal.
absolutely,
Yeah.
big time there. But and just the things that coaches do for you that they don't even understand or realize that they're doing for you, I guess, is the reason why I've stuck with it. I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been coaching since I got out of high school.
No, and you're great at it.
And I
I'm
love
glad
it.
you mentioned the kind of learning and extra step that Coach Gary put in for you, because it reminds me of one of the great coaches I had. You mentioned Mutt Burner. Now, Mutt was a phenomenal athlete and a renowned football player, and
Right.
he and Arthur Thompson were like legends of their era, especially Mr. Arthur.
Sure.
But he was not a basketball player. He'd be the first to tell you he was not a basketball mind. He coached us to the championship at PHS through a ton of research, hard work. He restructured his entire work schedule. He started going into the office at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning so that this guy's running Pond Food, a major company, right?
Right.
He'd go in super early so that he could drive us to the ball games. And I remember when I started coaching with your in-laws over there at Ponchatoula Youth Basketball, he knew, obviously, I knew what little I knew about basketball. I learned from him sitting on the bench of his championship.
Absolutely.
He gave me his old notes. It was old dot matrix. He had read all the John Wooden books, and it was
That's
the one,
awesome.
press and all that. But that's what you're saying about Coach Guidry, and it's just a great family man. I've been blessed to know his son Scott, his daughter Marcy.
Absolutely.
He was a great dad at home, and those guys never begrudged all the extra time he gave to his players. And it's just wonderful for the community that people like Coach Guidry, like Mutt Burner, and all these other guys you mentioned, your Uncle Warren and many others, stepped up and gave of themselves. Because the bottom line is, Kevin, it's not easy. You still got bills to pay. You got 4 kids to put through school. You got a mortgage. You got all the problems the rest of us have. But you're giving of yourself of that all important element of time, which we all know is worth money. But it's working. I mean, it's part of why you're such a great man. It's why your boys are growing into such great men. And I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you on behalf of the community, because we need it. I'm just beginning my journey as sports dad. I got literally the first call last night for T-ball from my son, Coach Roy Abity, great guy, played college football at UL.
Absolutely.
And here's a guy who, he's not some baseball guru like you, who's, knows the difference between a 4-seam fastball and a 2-seam fastball while watching it on TV. Maybe he does, Coach Roy. I don't mean to. He's a football guy, and he wasn't coaching T-ball. But Miss Diane, our administrator at our school, Strawberry Castle, said, Roy, we need you to coach the team, And he stepped up like that without a thought. And that's what you did 20-something years ago to start, and are still at it. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Look, I love it.
Playing days, okay? And if you got something else, please finish.
No, go ahead.
So, first at bat, I gave us a little teaser. And here you are. You play soccer, you play baseball. Your big opportunity, PHS baseball in the 90s was stacked. We had Philip Bankston here a few weeks ago, and we went through the litany of stud players that went on to play college ball, right? So
absolutely.
You weren't the only talented left-hander, right? You had Philip, you had, studs like Justin Adams, Phil McCrory, Corey Burner, Charlie Landry, Hunter Gomez. I mean, just one after another. Hunter went on to win a national championship.
Absolutely.
In the championship game for LSU. So all these studs are playing ahead of you at PHS, and you've been grooming under them. It's finally your turn. Assume your knees are knocking, you're nervous as heck. Tell us about how it went.
It wasn't quite like that, but it was against Fountain Blue.
Okay.
And back in the day, Fountain Blue was just coming along, but it was against Fountain Blue. It was my junior year. We was on the road at their place. It was the latter part of the game. I'll be honest with you, we had kind of already had the game in hand, and still didn't. I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden my number's called, and I remember
Melvin Myers calls you up. Says
Melvin Myers. I was so excited. I'm like, okay, and I pick up Charlie Landry's bat. I didn't even grab my bat. I picked up the old Black Magic Charlie Landry's, and I run out there.
Which probably weighed a ton, because Charlie was like,
it was
John
way too big.
Strong. He was the strongest dude in town.
It was way too big for me. But anyway, I ended up working the count and ended up getting to a full count. And, I guess as the story would go, he put it right down the middle, and I hit it out of the right field fence, and still feel like I'm watching it go today. And
that's awesome.
Again, as we talked about earlier, as I go back to that park now with my kids, it's just so interesting to relive all of those different things. And I can remember, as excited as I was to hit the home run, my one and only home run I'd ever hit in high school, as excited as I remember coming around third base, and everything was great until I rounded third base, and I looked home and I went, I don't want to go no farther, because they were all waiting for me. Charlie Landry, Jim Meads, Jeremy Babin, Hunter Gomez, the whole nine. They were all waiting for me at home, and I knew what was going to happen when I hit the plate. And they beat the heck out of my head, and I wasn't looking forward to going any farther than third. If I could have just stopped there, it would have been fine. But,
right, it's like you talked your first year. It's real fun to do, and you're proud you did it. But what waits for you afterwards is
not. Yeah, absolutely. But again, you talk about that team. I mean, those are some unbelievably talented baseball players, and still talk to a lot of them today.
Yeah,
so, absolutely.
It's amazing men, man. They've all so many
amazing guys.
Things.
You're right.
So Mark Verbois here chiming in again, says, great lesson to teach our kids. Not everyone can hit a home run in your first varsity at bat.
Right. Absolutely. Look, I don't even know what, I mean, that was one of those moments. There's no doubt. So, but you remember it the rest of your life, and you talk to your kids about it. And it's amazing. So.
Well, I want to share another comment here. Kristen Williams. I don't think I put you up here yet, Kristen, but she says, thank you for sharing your family story. It's a strong family, and she's blessed to know you and your family.
Absolutely. So I coach our little boy, Logan. Coached him now for 2 years. He's on the same team with Landry on a little team that I'm coaching now called the Stitches coming up. I coach with Steve Pugh, another good coach in the area. Good family. Absolutely.
Had his brother on the show a month or so ago. Yeah,
absolutely. I watched a little bit of that. That's right. Yeah. So she's got 2 wonderful kids. Her husband Josh, a great guy. Interesting thing, we were talking about earlier. Our kids are all so different. Our kids, Logan's a good little baseball player, good little athlete, good little basketball player, likes to draw. But her other son, Lathan, she has a younger son, Lathan, and he loves.
Nice name, right?
Yeah, great name. He loves to be an official, and I wish I had a video of it. But he'll wear the whole umpire's garment, the bag, the clicker, the mask, the uniform, and he'll stand behind a fence and he'll do the whole game. Basketball, he does the whole. He's a character, the little kid for sure.
Well, I love that because my family, we had a long line of officials.
Absolutely.
Called the SEC. Scott Vaughn, my other cousin's a third generation SEC football referee, and his dad was a 24 years NFL referee. That's my godfather, Jack Vaughn.
Absolutely. You bring those up.
And you need some connections there. Let me know. I can introduce you. Got some really blue blood referees and umpires that have come out of the Ponchatoula area.
You bring up the Vaughns, and that kind of brings me into another area. I'm involved with the Booster Club at Ponchatoula for the baseball program, and we're trying to do some things to bring back some things at Athletic Park and fix some things, and just trying to do a bunch of things at Athletic Park. Scott Tribble's a new coach there, and he's bringing in all kind of new things and really blessing us on all kind of different things that we're trying to do. Jared Bro was huge last year and getting a bunch of stuff done to the park.
Yeah.
Great friend of mine, and I'll talk about him in a minute as well. But he was huge in doing some renovations to the park. We completely redid the locker room, and it is an amazing place for the kids to go now. We got TVs in there. We got mirrors. We got their own lockers, different things like that. But we're looking to do more. And Randy Bush had put something out about untold stories in Tangipahoa Parish, and he took a picture of Athletic Park, and I made a little comment. And Parker, it just took off. Like we had 100 comments, things that I didn't ever know happened at Athletic Park that we learned. And the Vaughns come in and chimed a bunch of things that I didn't know that they were a part of at that park. Big part of getting that park built.
Oh, absolutely.
Didn't know that they had a guy that actually lived there at one time.
Right. So while you're chatting, I went and grabbed this off the wall. So folks, if you can see this is an old picture of the Ponchatoula Athletics. My fingers are wrong. That's my grandfather, Louis Layrisson. He was a pitcher for the Ponchatoula Athletics, were the semi-pro championship pro team that we had here in Ponchatoula. And the history of the park is amazing. And there's so many families that have been integral, not only to building it, like you said, the Dufreshes, I mean, yeah, the Duplessis. I mean, you name it. All these, the Edwards, all these families. The ones Kevin mentions, more that but then also renovating the park. So I so admire what you're doing, because I remember my dad and his group of buddies doing the same thing 25, 35 years ago when we were kids, right? I mean, they all went and invested a lot of money to get the park back up to speed. But it's an amazing resource to have here in Ponchatoula. I have probably a half dozen photos over there, which is not anything near what the Dufresh family has in their collection.
Right.
But it's really, really neat. I mean, we'll have to do a show on that one day. I'd love to get you, Kevin, and these guys like Jared, like Philip Bankston, all these other guys that have been involved in this revitalization project in here one day, and maybe we can get one of the Dufreshes or somebody who knows a lot more than we ever could about it. Talk about the park, because it's amazing.
And look, I learned this, and I learned this from you back in the Key Club days of high school. It's something I'm shooting for the stars with this thing, and I mean, I've called, Benny Latino, who's involved in Major League Baseball. Strader Dufresh has reached out to me to try to get some grants written. Like, I'm going for the stars. I want to get the Major League Baseball grant to completely redo the grandstand and everything. I don't know that we'll get it done, but that's our goal. That's what we're shooting for, and I'd love to do it.
Well, heck, man, if you shoot there and you land at a fraction of that, it's a banner success. But man, if you hit it, like, who knows what this could be?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful place, and we're looking to try to bring some do some high school tournaments there over the summer. Scott and I have talked to the city about and different things. So we've got some big ideas there. And the Vaughns have said that just call them. They're ready to help in any way they can.
Look, Scott's one of the most generous people in the world. He like his dad, like his brother John, who you knew well. Y'all were both years. They would give you the shirt off their back, and they really care. And in this photo, I don't see my Uncle Jack. Oh, no, Uncle Jack. So Uncle Jack Vaughn, the original Uncle Jack Vaughn Sr.,
right?
Coach, right? And he was the coach at the high school and all that too.
Yeah.
Big time sports figure. But he's in a lot of these other photos I have on my wall. So
through all that conversation and through Jack, someone Scott telling me about Jack Vaughn, that Will Clark played at Athletic Park when Mississippi State came down here to play one time. That's something cool that I didn't know. I had no idea. So so the connection there. So Scott Vaughn, who's still here in Ponchatoula, right?
It's First Down Healthcare. So you can get everything there from like physical therapy to the Hollywood facial. They do a lot of cool stuff. I have to get Scott on the show to tell you about it. I can't do it credit. But his father, Jack Vaughn, was the NFL referee who played shortstop at Mississippi State. They now actually have a lot of the officials, the umpires' locker room at the Mississippi State Stadium is named for him. There's a great little tribute up there. Scott, I think, soon will deliver his 3 rings from his 3 Super Bowls that he did up there. Very active with Mississippi State community. I remember when I went, he was my godfather. So he would bring me up there to stay with him to watch games and stuff in the summer and the spring when I was a kid. And when we went and sat, not only did he have these great seats behind the dugout, but they were engraved with his name, which I thought was cool. Like, who's got a college stadium seat with their name on it?
That's awesome.
But their father, before Jack, so Jack was a heck of a ball player. But his father, Jack Vaughn, who owned the Falstaff distributorship, he was a big-time sports guy, and he was the guy who actually, I think, coached the Athletics. Wow. Forgive me for the mistakes I'm making here, but my point is just it's a multi-generational thing.
Absolutely.
And in a nutshell, isn't that what we've been talking about here the whole time in Ponchatoula? We talk about all the Raiford traditions of raising kids right and coaching them up and making leaders of tomorrow. And that's what the Vaughns are doing. That's what the Rayfords are doing. That's what the Byers are doing, and the Babbins who you mentioned earlier. So we're talking earlier about your playing days, right? And we've talked a lot about your coaching days. Tell us about, because I can't let this escape us before we run out of time. Tell us about that love story. Tell us about Karen Byers Rayford.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
That actually, it's going to be interesting because all it stems back from Key Club. Back in the day when we were there, you had the Key Club and you had Sweethearts and the whole 9 yards. And
is this when you were president or before that? This
would have been president and then thereafter, when she was involved and just being around it all. That's when it all first, and funny little story here, and why not? It's Ponchatoula, right? So Jared Hill, a good friend of mine, used to date Karen
Right.
in high school.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Boo.
anytime they were having any kind of problems, he would always call me. Hey, call Karen for me. She always seems to listen to you. See if you can calm her down. So I would always call Karen to help
Right.
Jared out.
Right. Oh, good.
You know, long story short, the rest is history. But, you know, just that's, you know, and I couldn't go anymore, you know, when we get into Key Club, you know, and just the many different things that it's done for several different people, but Key Club and
Sure.
Danny Williams and you know, Parker, you Parker, I can remember that the first time I ever heard Key Club I was at Hi-Ho and I was getting a sandwich. You worked there and
Yeah.
you and Jeff need to come join Key Club. And I remember looking at you and saying, Parker, why do I want to make keys in high school? I'm not interested. I remember it like it was yesterday, and you explained it all to me, and then the rest is history. And
you did so great. I mean, let's pause for a second just to honor what a great job you did, because we've had several Key Club presidents on the show: Trey Harris, Baronis Clark, myself. You were one of those. I mean, if there's a Mount Rushmore of Key Club presidents, Kevin, you should be on there. You did a great job. I watched you develop from one of my junior most officers when I was the president to running the whole show, and not just doing as well as we did, but really eclipsing that. So you and your crew, you know, Jeff and all these other Mark Verbois who commented earlier,
absolutely,
y'all took it from what we were doing to the next level. Mark became a district officer. You were, you know, best president in the district. I mean, y'all just really nailed it, man. And I want to say thank you, because for those that don't know Key Club, this is the junior arm of the Kiwanis. It's a community service organization. So how does a Key Club prosper or thrive? By serving our community, by picking up trash off the side of the road, by going into the nursing homes and helping lonely little old ladies have a great day. You know,
absolutely.
Funds to send kids to college, you name it, y'all did it. And you did it as well as anybody ever did. So
Parker, look, I appreciate that, but you know, we couldn't have done anything that we did without you guys laying the path for us and giving us the direction and showing us what to do and how to do it. I mean, you know, from Trey Harris to Baronis Clark to Corey Berner. I could go on, you know, and yourself, obviously. And you know, I know plenty of people talk about Danny Williams, but I don't think anybody understands how much that man is a public servant and what he's done for this area. Sure. There is no telling how many pizzas he has sold in his day at the Strawberry Festival.
Right.
You know,
all of the proceeds going to charity, for
all
sure.
All of them going to charity, you know, and I'll get into something in a second about that. But, you know, my name was just on the top of it, but I couldn't have done any of that with the help of the guys that I had. I mean, as you'd said, you know, Jeff Leschier, Jeffrey Erickson, Mark Verbois, you know, Jason Angelette. We talk about Jason Angelette had the best scrapbook in the world. It was amazing. You know, Will Sims, Jeremy Thompson, and I'm sure I'm missing some, and I apologize, but you know, it was a team effort. I mean, we started something with Lindsay's. So anybody that was involved knows what that was. That was a little fair that we would go work and help work games and different things. And it was hard work, loading and unloading this truck with all these games and the many different things we did. But, you know, it instilled of what we are today. I mean, and again, not to talk about myself at all, but I have a nonprofit organization now. I have a hamburger booth at the Strawberry Festival. And we do that, and I've sent you know, baseball teams to Cooperstown, New York. I've had 2 teams go there. We've been to Kentucky, we've been to Tennessee, and the way I work it out, you know, they come and they work, and I don't keep any of it. It starts at 0, and I take it from the first time that we touch something involving that booth until the last thing that we put up. I take the money that we make, I divide the hours out, and I give it all back to the people that work. And it helps them pay for their children to go on these tournaments and do the things, you know, involved in those baseball tournaments that it takes. And there's been several that couldn't do it without it. And it's not me. I'm not saying that for me. I'm saying that thank you to Danny Williams for showing us what that's about. If it would never been for him and the previous names that I named, I'd have never learned what that was and how to do those things and how to provide for other people. It's not about yourself. It's about helping others, you know. And Scott Tribble has something that resonates with me. It kind of goes along with that. You know, you don't play for the name on the back of your jersey. You play for the name on the front of your jersey. Yeah. And that it's just huge. And I couldn't thank Mr. Danny enough for what he's instilled in so many people in this community, and it has helped this community like this community would never know.
Well, you make a great point. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of giants who did it before us, right? And we've named but just a few that came before you and me. But man, Mr. Danny is one of them. And it's like circling back to the description you gave of your parents earlier, quiet leaders, right? Isn't that what Mr. Danny? I mean, here's this brilliant guy. We still call him Mr. Danny. He's now Dr. Danny, right? He's this brilliant doctorate level brain who had this storied career as a wonderful educator. He's done so many things. In his church, he's been a leader, a deacon, a music minister, etc. But he really molded so many young men and women through the Key Club and helped us to achieve. And now you're doing it. And you mentioned your booth at the Strawberry Festival. Well, let's talk about the person who inspired perhaps the most iconic booth at the festival, Charlie Landry. The Charlie Landry Memorial Scholarship has done more to educate kids and just provide this community than just about any charity you can name. And it all stems from this great man who once upon a time was a great kid, who was a dear friend of yours, was a teammate of mine, a friend of mine. Tell us about Charlie, and let's honor his memory by just talking a little bit about who he was and what he meant to you.
And you're going to get me, but Charlie meant so much.
I'm sorry, but I had to go there. I warned you before the show, man.
I know. And, Charlie meant so much to me. And obviously I named one of my children after him,
right?
The baby. But just the man that he was, the things that he did, he was such for Ponchatoula. I mean, who's better than Charlie Landry? But if you asked him, he was nobody. He was just another old country boy. I can remember his little his gold truck that he used to drive. I mean, it didn't even have windows. It had Visqueen on it. But if you asked him, it was the best truck in the world.
Right.
I mean, he was an incredible guy. I can remember stories, and I could go on and on and on. But, one story, it was we finished baseball practice and it's time to leave, and his truck wouldn't start. Well, I go get my jumper cables. I'm going to try to jump it out. I don't need them. He gets that bat that I talked about earlier in the show that I hit a home run with. He goes out there, the Black Magic, and just bangs on the battery with his bat and gets in and it starts. I'm like, what in the world?
It really was Black Magic.
It was Black Magic, I'm telling you. So, I mean, Charlie was just an inspiration. And I'll tell one other little story about Charlie. And again, some people didn't believe me when I said it, and I don't care. But Charlie meant so much to me. He grew up in high school. He dated my cousin, Becky, who was, like a sister to me, very, very close. And because I was Becky's cousin, nobody was going to mess with Kevin because they knew they had to deal with Charlie. And that just meant so much to me coming up. And I tell everybody how important it is to, again, play sports, be involved, have people that are going to take care of you as a young freshman and not go down those wrong roads. And it's so valuable because it wasn't until I was working for your dad at the sheriff's office and going to the academy. And I remember, we were doing a drug training, and I raised my hand and I said, can I come look at all those? I've never seen any of that. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, I've never seen any of that. And it was because people like Charlie who protected me and would never let anybody get anywhere near me with any of those things. And it's just stuff like that you could go on and on about Charlie. You
as a little brother. And the neat thing about Charlie was, obviously he gave you special attention because of your relationship, but he was a root for the underdog kind of guy. He was a natural born protector,
Absolutely.
He really was. I often think, you know how Jerry West is the logo of the NBA? If Ponchatoula had a logo and it was a person, it would be Charlie. I just envisioned
it would be Charlie. I agree.
Somebody, or
absolutely.
He really, his family embodied the best of this town.
And they still do.
Mr. Ralph, first base, not my first. Muddy Burn was my first baseball coach, but Ralph was probably my second. And they're just great people,
Great people. I mean, Darren,
dog.
Absolutely, Darren's still doing good things. All
his
of
mama, oh my
Miss
gosh,
Sandra
a wonderful woman.
Is a wonderful woman. You're right, but
they're great people.
And I still, on the board that I serve on now for the the baseball program, Booster Club, Nikki's basically my right hand. I mean, she does everything. She helps me tremendously. If it would be for Nikki, I couldn't get a lot done that I do. So I mean, it's just the whole family. It's just servants. Like it's just what they do. And it's crazy for me to sit here and think that I'm on this show talking about this. And what would this show be like if Charlie was sitting here? I mean, the show that you would have with him.
It'd be a hell of a lot funnier and
It'd
wild.
be a whole lot funnier, and it'd be a whole lot better stories and a whole lot more success than I've ever had. I mean, Charlie.
I don't mean that as a diss
incredible.
to you, but he could, Charlie's charm was at 1,000% to our,
I'll tell you one funny little story because I gotta tell you. So a couple of weeks before the tragic accident, he had rented a little house there on 51, and just right where that little snowball stand is today. And we were all there. And Karen at that time was working as a teller for Hancock Bank right there on the corner, 22 and 51.
Okay.
And her and I were dating, and it's Friday afternoon. We got a big weekend planned, and all of a sudden Charlie comes running out the house. Raiford, I got to go get money. I said, well, come on, let's go. So we jump in his car. He's driving. I'm driving, and we go through Hancock. He's like, no, go the other way. I want to see Karen. So we go in the drive-through backwards.
Got you going
so that
backwards.
He could see Karen and take care of his transactions. And that was, the last time that I saw him. But it just, what a wonderful family. What a wonderful guy. And it goes back to me and you keeping stats for football. We were Charlie's statisticians, and
I remember well, we were doing it when he crossed the 1,000-yard mark,
Absolutely.
It
used to call Friday Night Football and report all the stats and all that after the game. So
that's the kind of guy Charlie was. I mean, again, y'all had this special relationship, but hey, let's face it, the stat guy on the football team. I mean, you were a jock in other rights, so you had some street cred as a baseball player, a soccer credit. I didn't, man. Okay, and but what kind of star football player is as nice to the nerd taking his statistics as he is to the quarterback?
Right?
Charlie was. He'd hang out with
Absolutely.
me or any other, nerdy guys as quick as his other great buddies. And while we're on the topic of Charlie, let's drop some respect and love out for another great one of that era we lost too early, Brad Womer.
Absolutely. What a great family.
Great family, great parents, great sister, just wonderful folks. I'll give you a quick break because I know I teared you up there a little bit, and I thank you for being willing to share that. It's so emotional. But you're getting some more love here online. Devin McKinney with a great long comment here about what a great coach you are and about how you're just infectious smile and upbeat attitude has such a great effect on the soccer program. So Devin, thank you for watching, tuning in. And I know you probably were appreciating that Vaughn talk earlier. You were so close with my cousin John. He really thought the world of you. Kristen says the boys smiling ear to ear. Little Larry Macaluso. Larry, I'm sorry, you're a grown man. We shouldn't Larry still. The Larry Macaluso, great guy.
Absolutely.
Guy there. One guy we both know a bit. We look at Brie Layrisson there. Maybe signing his marriage license there. The newlywed Chief Brie Layrisson says, great family. He's so proud of your boys, and they work so hard to be successful. And you mentioned Lindsay's, and old Ben Richardson still has his Lindsay shirt.
That's not surprising.
I would bet he and my brother Louie worked so many of those together in the Key Club days. I bet Louie burned his out of protest. He was so.
I bet he did. Absolutely.
So we've only got a few more minutes here. We got to get you out of here to get to these ball games.
No, that's fine. Look, one other little thing I wanted to,
share.
A story I wanted to share, and I'll probably get emotional again, and I hate that I do it, but I am who I am. The bros, Jared Bro.
Oh, Jared, what a great guy. He and Brandon.
Wonderful guy. Absolutely.
So strong.
So my son, they're close friends with Brady, broke his nose playing soccer. A couple weeks, a month and a half ago, broke his nose in 3 spots, had to have surgery. Well, here I am that morning, surgery, we go through the cancer center, the surgery center is above the cancer center. And here I am, couldn't sleep the night before. My son's got to have surgery. He's going in for a 45-minute procedure. I'm on pins and needles, can't even really deal with it. Just crazy, just going to surgery, going to get put out the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And then after my son comes
Don't
out.
Don't apologize for that. I was on pins and needles with my kid getting tubes in their ears.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's normal. It is what we
think is a small surgery.
Absolutely. So, and I'm sitting there, and then I really just got a hold of myself, and I called Jared, and I was like, Jared, man, I just got to tell you how much we admire you and your family,
right.
Brandy. Sarah, Brady, all of you guys for what y'all are doing and going through. Y'all are so strong about it, so inspiring. And, here I am going through something real simple. And it was, to me, it was so devastating. And you're going through what you're going through with your family and Brady, and y'all are so strong and always looking at what you can do for others, and just an incredible family. And I just, prayers go out to them, and we love them and anything. And so I say that about, Jared being who he is, he's going through what he's going through. He puts together an organization that he's put together, and he's raising money for childhood cancer. And he's got a little organization, morethan4.org, morethan-for.org. He's hosting a big tournament next month on the 12th. But if anybody, you want to help a family, that I can guarantee you the money's going to where a great cause to help childhood cancer. Look that website up. Go in there. Be a sponsor. They don't have. I don't think they have room for teams. They've been that successful. But just be a part, man. Find a way to sponsor.
Share the website one more time. If somebody's watching here live that has the ability to type this in, please do that in the comments. If you don't, Kevin or I, one of us will come in here later, put it in. But please, one more time, share that website, because it's such
more than a four. So morethan-for.org, morethan4.org. And again, it's, Brady and Brady's doing well. He's such a fighter, comes by the house and
great
such
kid.
a great kid, great athlete. And so anyway, just, anybody out there, look for him and trying to help them out.
Because they are the embodiment of kind of this principle of Ponchatoula that we started this show on. The whole show here, it's been about family, right? And about how great families, especially when two great families come together, breed the next generation. Oh, Kristen Williams, thank you so much for sharing this website for us. We really appreciate it. But, what I love about Ponchatoula is you can have the families that have been around forever, the Rayfords, the Lairissons, 100 years. I mean, you are literally, you didn't know this, Kevin, you're sitting in the Rayford room, that conference room.
I did.
Your cousins who owned this house before it was my law office. The
Absolutely.
So that's great and all, but Ponchatoula is not just the PV, Rayford, been here for a million years type families. It's the Smiths, Brandon.
Absolutely.
It's also families like Jared. I mean, Jared, that's what they are, right? Brandy, the Wells family, they've been here forever. They're old guard. Brandy Wells, now Brandy Bro, one of the finest women in my class at PHS. Just great person, inside and out. And here's Jared, the new kid in town. Lucky enough to meet Brandy Bro at school and marry her.
Right.
Of Hattiesburg, I'm sure, in his day or whatever that was. But my point is, great guy, but he comes in with a giver's heart and has done so much for this community. At St. Joe through the boosters, the high school level. You've been talking about all these things he's done. And so it's just kind of cool, and you see often that these guys run together, right? I mean, you run in packs. It's no coincidence that the great man who was on the show 2 weeks ago, Philip Bankston, is coaching with you, and all these connections. So thank you for coming on, Kevin. You have been a phenomenal guest. This has been such a great show because you kept it real. You shared of your heart. So personal. I so appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable and talk about subjects and people that are dear to your heart. And of course, I'd expect nothing less. I've known you, my whole life. So folks, when I led into this show and told you we were talking to the finest men in Ponchatoula, I don't blame you if you don't trust a lawyer. I wouldn't either. But now you've seen proof. You've seen evidence right with your own two eyes. Kevin Raiford, one of the best people in town. So Kevin, thank you, brother. I love you, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that you shared your time with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And again, I'm nobody without everybody around that helps us all who become who we are. And
you're modest, too modest, but I appreciate it. And I'm sorry there were so many topics we didn't get to. Your career. We were going to talk about all the success Kevin's had in public service, and now he's at the assessor's office. He worked at the sheriff's office. He was a very successful private business executive in the world of finance. We have to bring you on for round 2. You got plenty more stories. We'll circle back and get to that. I'm sorry we didn't get there today, folks. But I just want to thank you again, Kevin, and to our viewers. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for watching. We will be back here next week, same time, same place. We'll be live at 5. So thank you for tuning in to Ponchatoula Live.